Hi, my name is John McGregor, and I'm going to be here speaking with you about the Irish whistle or penny whistle or whatever kind of whistle you want to call it. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our grantors that are helping make this possible. We have the Arizona Commission on the Arts, the Flagstaff Arts Council, Flagstaff Community Foundation, City of Flagstaff, and Coconino County. I think that covers them all. So anyway, I was asked to do a little talk about the whistle. Just give a little bit of background. I think it's important if everybody has some type of musical background. I have a degree in music education. I taught high school band, but I'm a tuba player, which explains why I play Irish whistle right now. But there's a backstory to that, and it kind of plays into this whole thing eventually when deciding what kind of whistle works for me. So if you have a background in, let's say, wind instruments, you can draw on a lot of that, and I think it'll help explain some of these terms, but we'll keep it kind of basic to show you what works for me. There's some ideas to think about, and if you're ever interested in learning how to play the whistle, hopefully this will help you. So to start off with, I guess the first thing is we know what the Irish whistle is. Some people call it an Irish whistle, a penny whistle, a tin whistle. Different names, same instrument. It's also very similar to the recorder, if you ever did that in school, the same fingering system. But anyway, it's just what instrument do you want to start with? So for me, when I was teaching band, I used to go down to the early beginners, like the 5th grade, and help teach them recorder, and that was one of our recruiting tools for eventually going into band. So I learned how to play the recorder, and I started showing that, and that's just kind of stuck with me, same fingerings. And then when I got to looking at a whistle, I just started real cheap. I think it was a Walton one or a Clark one I picked. You can go down to your music store. A&P's got them. It's kind of nice. It comes with a really inexpensive whistle, a little book, and a little fingering chart to kind of show you how to do this. And if you don't read music, it's an easy way to start. It'll just show you with names and the notes on the staff and which holes to cover up on the whistle. So I would suggest before you spend lots of money, which you can spend lots of money on an Irish whistle, which is kind of crazy, start cheap and then go from there. So after you've decided your whistle, another thing you have to talk about is tunable or non-tunable. And I'll kind of show you, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is an inexpensive whistle. Right here, it's called a Sasato. It's plastic. It's like a PVC pipe with a stipple on it. This does not move up here, so it's not tunable, but that's fine starting off by yourself. There's really no reason to spend extra money on something that's tunable because you're not tuning to anybody else at that time. Eventually, you want to move to something, if you continue playing and want to join a session or start a band or something, you do want to be able to tune. Very important that you're able to do this for your fellow musicians. And then the tuning is real simple. The head just moves up or down. Okay, you slide it out if you're sharp, you push it in if you're flat. So get a tunable whistle. It doesn't cost that much more even for the entry-level ones, but you just need to decide, do you want to start off with a tunable? It's probably cost you an extra maybe 30 or 40 bucks. Or you just want to start with the base one, see if you even like it. So that's something to think about. There are different materials in the whistles, and you can get tin, that's a cheap one, a tin whistle. That's kind of where it came from. I think the Waltons and the Fedogs are like that. You can get plastic. It's a plastic one. Nice thing about this, they're really hard to break. Wooden one, like this, or a different metal, brass or aluminum or nickel. So those are your choices. The tin whistle is actually made of tin. Their sound is just not that great. It's kind of real airy and thin. Doesn't hold tuning very well. It seems to be kind of pretty pitchy. Plastic ones, it's like everything else that's plastic. It doesn't have quite that much depth to it. Wood is the softer sound. Brass, I think, is a little bit brighter, harder sound. It's up to you. Being, like, say, a tuba player, I use incredible amounts of air when I play. So I had to pick something that would let me push that much air through it. And so I eventually settled on, with the help of Jackie, I think it's the Burke, isn't it? I'm talking off screen. I shouldn't do that. You're not supposed to do that, right? So anyway, this is a brass instrument, and it works for me. because I'm used to brass, and it lets me blow really hard, and it doesn't kick it back, and it doesn't tend to blow things too sharp or too flat. So think about what kind of air you're going to use. If you have some history as being a wind instrument player, you might want to get something that helps you push more air through it. If you don't want to work that hard, well, then get something that speaks a little bit easier. I think that's covered the different materials. So another piece of equipment I would suggest to get to help everybody is a tuner. Now you can just download one on your smartphone nowadays, and a metronome. Tuner tells you play a note, tells you if it's sharp or flat, then you adjust, push in if you're flat, pull out if you're sharp. And then it sets a metronome, which metronome is just the tick-tock that keeps, well, I think the batteries are dead anyway. It just keeps your tempo steady, which is really good for practicing, because you want to make sure you're playing things at a steady tempo and things line up, so when you go and play with someone else, your speed is not different speeds, okay? So that's an easy investment, and I think you can probably download both of those on your phone if you don't want to buy the old school tuner metronome. I think that covers those. Now, as far as picking a brand of whistles, there's like over 70, last time I looked, over 70 different makers of whistles in the world. That's just a lot, and there's probably a lot more than that. People just make them in their garage, because literally are people that will roll a piece of whatever up and drill the holes, and there you go. So there's different types of bores. There's a cylindrical bore, and then there's just a straight bore, and that just affects the type of sound you're going to get. Also helps how much air you're going to push through it. So experiment. Don't spend a lot of money at first. Wait until you're kind of comfortable with something, and go from there. The most common whistle is just the D whistle. Most folk music of this genre is played in the key of D or G or its relative minors. So the D whistle is almost like 90% of the tunes you can get by with this, no problem. The low D whistle, which is this baby and big boy, it's just the same finger, it's just a lower octave lower pitch on the whistle. That's really, it's up to you what you want to start with, but I would definitely suggest D. And then the next whistle I would get would be a C whistle, and then maybe an A whistle. Those are the three most common ones that I've ever used. If you want to get other ones, you can certainly do that, but that's the down the road thing. I'll kind of explain the old trick you can do, so you don't have to work so hard to learn all different fingering systems. So low D, and then your regular D. Again, these are Berks. There's all kinds of out there. That's one good brand. Copeland. The other top brands there are the Bussman, Blackwood, whatever works for you. I mean, the guy that chiefed him, Patty, what's his name? He plays on a pretty cheap, inexpensive Clark whistle sometimes. So, you can make it sound good or bad, but going out and spending a lot of money at first I wouldn't do it. But you can see they have spent a lot of money because they have a lot of different whistles. One thing to think about on a lower whistle, is your fingers. I have really long, skinny fingers. Great for piano, not so great for whistle, because I have a hard time covering holes. In fact, I've used a bagpipe fingering just as straight across here instead of curved, because my fingers are just that skinny. So I have a hard time doing that. Now, some companies can kind of customize where they drill the holes to fit your hand. And we tried it on this one, it's comfortable like this, but again, that's skinny fingers. And these holes in the big instruments are bigger. So that's a consideration. You can get a little gizmo here. It's a little key adapter. If you can't cover it, you can just push it down with using your pinky. But the hole above that's bigger, so I still have a problem with that. So if you have big fat hands, great. If you have long skinny fingers, it'll be a little more of a challenge on the low whistles. So you've decided which kind of whistle you're going to pick. Again, stick with D to start off with, and then pick your brand, pick your material, and you can go anywhere from that. As far as the material, just a couple of things. I think I talked about the tin whistles. Again, are kind of a soft sound. This is a 10 whistle in C. Okay, that's a nice sound, but it doesn't project much more than that. Okay, so if I'm sitting somewhere in a session, I want to be heard, or in a band, yeah, it's going to be a problem. You go to a brass instrument, you can hear it projects a lot more. It's a little bit stronger sound, which works nice more like maybe a session or a band setting. This is a wooden whistle. Different sound. And then this cheapo plastic one. So some different sounds there. Same tune, different materials. Okay, so just pick which one works for you and what setting you're in. Sometimes, and as I'm playing, I'll just, if it's a softer, like an air or something like that, I'll just pick a softer instrument to play because I think it's less piercing. But if I'm playing, it's like a bawdy, green beer song or a dance tune, I want something that's going to project more. Because you have to remember in whistle, like you're talking about a sound pyramid, the top of the pyramid is the kind of the icing. You're the icing with a whistle. The bottom, you got your guitar, your bigger instruments, bigger sounds, your drums and fiddle. You're working up here. So pick something that's going to project and do the job you want it to do. And that just depends on kind of the setting you're doing. So we talked about you need tuner, metronome. Oh, if you got a tunable whistle, you need some type of like little grease, like even Vaseline works fine. Just so the tunable part actually moves. That's nice to do. A music stand is a good thing to have. One of the worst things to do for practicing is if you just throw your music or whatever on the bed, you're sitting there hunched over. So get a music stand, get you upright, and so all this is straight and you're not crimping your windpipe, essentially. Okay, it's like a garden hose. Water flows better unless as it's just straight. And then as far as music, the Portland book, everybody knows about these. It's got a gazillion tunes in it. Get that, or you can download so much music right now. Free websites, it's really easy to do. And then, or find a book that's maybe got the music and like a accompanying CD. And that way it has a practice tempo and it has a performance tempo, and it's fun to play along without having to get a band together. So those are some suggestions to get things going. As I said before, there are other keys that you can play in. Because again, start with D. Well, here's the trick. I'm not going to take the time to sit and learn how to refinger things like in E flat. Okay, if I need to play something in E flat, I'm just going to learn everything on my D whistle, and then if I want to play it in C, well, I just pick up the C whistle and play the same fingerings, and it comes out in the key of C. Same thing with A. So that's what I do. It seems to be the easiest thing. Learn it in D. You don't have to worry about transposing or anything like that. You just pick up if the key that you're playing with your group is in A, and I know that, hey, I know this tune in D, I don't know it in A. Well, get an A whistle and then play the tune just like you would on your D whistle, and it comes out in the key of A. Easiest thing to do. No reason to get involved in the theory of it. So that's what I think you should do. Okay, making a sound. It's real simple. There's some approaches to it. You want to start the sound and have a good impact at the beginning. So I always think of saying, this is kind of if you're a wind player, I think of saying the word like to or toe. I don't want to think of saying who, although you hear like who like that. You see the attack is not very focused. It's just kind of air going that way. So the note may not speak right away. So if I want the note to sound when I want it to sound right away, I'm going to think of saying to or toe. I want a little bit softer sound, okay? So like let me think. I'm just thinking toe, 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 not who, okay? So I would think about that, just making your sound. You want to take a good deep breath in through your nose. Well, into your mouth, sorry. I'm not that's like a doctor. So big deep breath and play it. Each time I play, and I don't know if I'm going to play for 4 measures or I'm going to try to play for 16 measures, I'm going to take a big deep breath, okay? Because that just gives you a good, solid, steady tone all the way through, and your sound's not going to decay. And you're not going to come up to an end of a phrase and run out of air and not be able to finish things the right way. So big deep breath every time you play. start the initial attack of the note with like with some type of articulation, and then in the music world, articulation is using your tongue to start something, toe, and there's different articulations out there. And I'll talk about that a little bit because I have some thoughts on that. One thing to remember about playing this, your left hand goes on top, your right hand goes on the bottom. If you get it backwards, you're going to run into trouble eventually. Left hand on top, right hand on the bottom. That being said, there's probably people out there playing it upside down, and they make it work, but they have to work harder to do that. Fingers slightly curved, thumbs in the back, relaxed, okay, not tense, anything like that. Again, if you're going to spend the money on it, like an expensive whistle, just make sure the fingers fit the holes, okay? And if they need to reposition them a little bit, they can do that. Okay, let's talk about so how we make a sound. You take a deep breath, toe, and just let it go. Nice thing about whistles, it's really easy to make a sound on. Jackie's going to talk about flute, which is a lot more difficult. This you're playing into, flute you're kind of playing over and into, so it's a little more difficult, and she'll talk about that. So it's easy to make a sound on whistle. Now articulations. Articulation is how you start the sound. There are some schools of thought out there, and it's been told to me, like, there's no tonguing when you play the Irish whistle, the penny whistle. I'm like, really? I don't agree with that, because I think depending on the style you're playing, if I'm playing a march, so I want it to sound a little more martial sound, a little more articulated. Okay, da 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 da. If I'm playing something slow, like I played earlier, I'm using a different type of articulation. So if I want something to have a nice, crisp sound, I'm going to think of more of a staccato, you know, like that. If I wanted to have a softer sound, I'm going to think of singing more legato. So think of singing two, I'm going to think of singing lu, you know, where the tip of the tongue just touches the top of the mouth, and that softens the attack. And it depends on what type of music you're playing, what sound you want to make it. But for somebody to tell you there's no tonguing in penny whistle music, they've never played a wind instrument probably. And yeah, you're going to tongue, it's which sound you want to make it, how do you want to make it come across. So don't get hung up on that. It's folk music. I think the whole point of folk music is there's really not, it's the music of the people, and so you want to make it your sound. There's no rules, there are traditions, but traditions can be changed and you make it your own thing. I can point out to lots of people that play with articulation, and it depends on the music and the note requirements. If you have repeated notes, well, if I don't use my tongue to change it, this sounds like, right? So you got to use your tongue at some point to articulate and make the sound happen. Also, if I'm playing something fast, let's see, you want it to be, you'll be able to drive the tempo. And I think when you're able to tongue things and make it a little bit shorter, I think it helps you keep from dragging in the music. It's weird how you sit here trying to think of a tune to play and everything goes blank. I got all these tunes in my head. So that's kind of a fast tune. You want to make it have a lot of drive and not drag, so I tongue a little bit harder, and that's cool. Okay. Also, that speaks farther away, and the notes sound more distinct. Okay. So that's my band director approach to this. I think it's important that the notes sound correct in the right place in the music. But again, make it your own. What style? How do you want this tune to sound? There's some basic rules of if it's a slow ballad, soften it up. Nobody likes to be screamed at when they're having a ballad sung to them. If you're playing something fun and rowdy, punch it a little bit harder, okay? Now, if you read music, great. It's pretty straightforward. I think if you can do, you get two choices. You either read music or you play by ear. I guess there are pluses and minuses about both of them. The people that seem to have it really nice are the ones that read music and can play things by ear. It just makes the best of both worlds. If you do read music, don't be afraid to use music, okay? I'd much rather hear someone play the right notes in the right place than somebody who thinks they have it memorized and play the wrong notes. And so you have a flute player over here that's knows playing all the right notes, and you got a whistle player over here that's supposed to be playing the same music, and this whistle player thinks they have it memorized, and the flute player is playing it the right way, and you have two people playing the same music, and it sounds wrong, makes them both sound wrong because they're playing wrong notes in wrong places. So use music if you need to use music. If you can memorize it, great. If you have the time to do that, fantastic. I'm not great at memorizing music. So I refer to the music when I need to, because I much rather, if I'm performing for someone, play the right notes at the right places. That's just personal opinion. Repetition when you're learning music. Start slow, we talked about with the metronome, and then speed things up gradually until you can play it at the performance tempo you want to do. I know in sessions you can sit there and they repeat a lot of tunes so everybody gets it down, and that's cool. It's the same concept, it's repetition, but do it the right way, learn the music, the right notes, because practice makes permanent. If you practice it wrong, you're going to play it permanently wrong. If you practice it right, learn it right, you're going to play it permanently right. So do that. And it comes to performing, well, I think with ensembles, key thing is listen. If you're out of tune, change it. If you don't, and use this slide on here to play in tune. Don't overplay the instrument. Don't overblow it to try to make it too loud. You're going to blow your pitch sharp and flat. And then know your instrument to know its tendencies. You can tune everything, but if you know, hey, when I come to a C natural here, my C natural is always flat. Well, you have to adjust that. Now, you can't obviously change your slide here, but you can manipulate the sound by pulling the whistle in and out some. And that's just something you learn, the characteristics of your sound, of your whistle, and how you play it. And then you can address that and make those changes. So in conclusion, I always think when you're doing music, we play music. We don't work music. And when I was teaching band, I told my kids, eventually, bottom line, you got to have fun with this. And if you're not having fun, that's called work. And Jackie always reminds me of that too. Make sure you're having fun with it. Play your music. Make it your own. It's folk music. I'm a big believer that each time you take a tune, you hand it down, and it gets passed on through generations. Everybody puts their stamp on it, puts their sound on it. I can digress a little bit, and if I'm wrong, someone can correct me, but I think one of the greatest gifts that Americans have given to the music world is we're not afraid to improv. We're not afraid to change things up. We're not afraid to make different sounds, and I think that's cool in folk music. I think you got to do that, because look at the incorporation of African instruments into Celtic music. Look at the different sounds you see out there, the different approaches to things. If it stays the same, you're going to get passed up in the musical world. So I think you got to adapt, improvise, incorporate some jazz, some blues, some African tempos, some African patterns. Don't be afraid to do that. If you listen to some of the top groups out there, I think Old Blind Dogs, they do it all the time, and they're considered a really traditional band, but they certainly are incorporating that. So don't be afraid to put your stamp on your music. Listen when you play. Record yourself. It's a great thing to do. It's the ugly truth, like I'm doing right now. You can't lie with the recorder. Okay, it's going to give you the ugly truth. You're either playing it right or you're playing it wrong, and just figure out how to fix it. So that's my little spiel about the penny whistle, and I hope you learned a few things. And if you didn't like it, then I hope you enjoyed your beer. And I'm going to turn things over here now. We're going to talk about the flute a little bit. Thanks.